so let's just finish up here, wind up Freud. So like I said, Freud kind of is the father of modern psychology, mostly because he brought the idea of therapy forward. So psychoanalysis is Freud's theory of personality and therapy. Is kind of based off of this idea that, of this unconscious part of us, right? So Freud said, in order for us to get to the things that are bothering us, the things that make us maybe make bad decisions, do bad behaviors, that all of this must be buried in our unconscious. So if we talk about what's going on, if we talk about our past, we can maybe bring these things out of the unconscious and deal with them. All right? So psychoanalysis is the therapy that Freud would do. And he didn't really invent it. He stole it from a bunch of other people that were doing therapy type stuff, but he kind of brought it into the forefront, talked about it, went, toured the world talking about it, wrote books about it, blah, 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 showed like, hey, this is something that really can help people. And the idea is you just get people talking and talking and talking. You say, tell me about your family, tell me about your childhood, tell me about this. And eventually all this stuff that we've shoved down into the basement of our unconscious starts to come up, right? The longer you talk to someone, the more deeper you get with them, correct? So same thing with a therapist. Right, I'm going to start digging up all this stuff, and we're going to start finding these things that are causing you problems. And once we see them, once we bring them out of unconscious into consciousness, then we can name them, we can talk about them, we can fix them. All right, so psychoanalysis is a very, very, very long process. It's like a couple times a week for months or years at a time. Now, we don't do psychoanalysis and therapy hardly at all. I think there's only one or two colleges that even teach you how to do it anymore because it just takes too long. We have much better ways to help you via therapy than doing psychoanalysis. But it can work. It just takes a really long time. Insurance doesn't cover it. It's pretty much the therapy that rich people with a lot of time on their hands can use. But from psychoanalysis, we did evolve forward into having much better forms of therapy today where we can help you and get you on a better path in a much quicker period of time. All right, so the last part of Freud is just to talk a little bit about the Neo-Freudians, which are the people who came after Freud. Now, they kind of developed competing psychoanalytic theories that they don't always compete with Freud, but they're going to just have different ways of looking at things. And the further away we get from Freud, the kind of further away we get from his kind of crazy, weird sex stuff. So the person who first came after Freud was Carl Jung, and they actually were friends. They hung out together. Jung talked a lot about the unconscious. He talked about what's called a personal and a collective unconscious, that everyone has this kind of personal unconscious where all of your own stuff is stored, but that we as a group, as humans, have what he called a collective unconscious, which is a way that we kind of view the world, and that we have these kind of different archetypes for what a hero is and what a mother is and things like that, and we all kind of view the world in the same way. Jung is looked at more in metaphysical type stuff. We don't look at him so much in psychology because he was a little bit out there and he really liked doing drugs also. Alfred Adler talked a lot about inferiority and overcompensation, which were those Freud defense mechanisms. Adler also brought forth the idea of the birth order theory, that when you were born has an impact on your personality. That firstborns tend to have very similar personalities, middle children tend to have similar personalities, youngest children. And you've all heard this, right? You've all heard things talk about, middle child, blah, blah, blah. All of that came initially from Alfred Adler, who was a Neo-Freudian, who was also talking about how, your background, your childhood, your defense mechanisms shape who you are. Karen Horney talked about anxiety and neurotic personalities that are kind of born into us. She actually did study kids, which was, a big change in things, and kind of where anxiety comes from and what our parents do to us that kind of bring out anxiety. So she kind of started focusing more on, the impact of the parents and, how, what they do kind of affects who we are as people. And then kind of the furthest we can get away from Freud is Erik Erikson. And he's probably one of my most favorite psychologists out there. Erikson, while still a neo-Freudian, because he does still talk about the unconscious and how it affects us, he looks more at the social relationships across the lifespan and how they affect us and change us and kind of have an impact on who we are. And Erikson's one of the very few theorists who have a theory that goes across the entire lifespan. So if you take the lifespan psychology course, we talk about Erikson pretty much the entire semester because he covers the entire lifespan. So he really looks at not how the sexual stuff kind of shapes us across time, but how our social relationships shape us across time, and how our parents and peers and loved ones and romantic relationships and how all of that is constantly kind of pulling at us and changing us, and how our personality kind of reflects that across time. So he's a pretty cool cat, Erikson. Also the furthest from Freud that you can get, but still be within the neo-Freudian framework. All right, so our current research on this says that yes, we have defense mechanisms. We definitely use those. All right, that's totally true. We do have an unconscious mind, and it does influence our conscious behavior, right? A lot of times we're doing things we don't know why we're doing them, right? Why do I keep dating the same crappy guys? Well, there's something going on in your unconscious that's drawing you towards those same crappy guys, right? Why am I always, procrastinating? Things like this. There are things that you're just not dealing with that you don't want to face in your life that are in your unconscious. That is true. Now, how you deal with it and how you, maybe change that in yourself can be done in different ways. But Freud was right, this does exist. And yes, we do use defense mechanisms. And like we say, we do tend to marry people that are like our opposite sex parent if we are heterosexual. And children do identify with the same sex parent when they are around the age of 3 or 4. But because they are learning their kind of gender identity and gender stability across time. All right, we will do other perspectives next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Whoops.